All right, guess what? 3:30 Friday afternoon, and it's time for Ask a Bookkeeper with bookkeeper extraordinaire Stephanie Conley from Steph's Books. Check her out at www.stephsbooks.com. Today, year-end cleanup tips and tricks. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Stephanie Conley with Steph's Bookkeeping Service. I always feel like so panicked when you're giving the intro to get like the watch party going on Facebook and log in.
I gotta get it.
I always get so panicked and flustered. Okay, so anyways, as everybody knows, we've entered fourth quarter. And so that kind of means that tax season is right around the corner, even though yesterday was the official deadline to file for extensions. Now we're getting ready to file for 2020, which I'm sure everybody had the most adventurous, fun year in business. So I have lately we've been getting some phone calls and comments from people that they haven't set up their QuickBooks yet. They started their business this year, and now they don't really know what to do going into fourth quarter and what their CPA or bookkeeper or whomever, what they're going to need. So I figured I would give you guys some setup tips on your QuickBooks and then show you these different import strategies to save you time and stress.
Fantastic.
So we have Craig's Landscape and Design pulled up, which is the sample company for QuickBooks Online. So once you get your file set up, which we covered in a previous episode, you want to go to banking and then banking, and it will pull up any of your active bank accounts or credit cards. So let's say that you have a new credit card or a new bank account, or your bank fee dropped or your credit card fee dropped, and you're missing like 6 months of transactions.
Huh.
So your option is either you could sit here, manually enter them in one by one, which may take a little bit of time.
Especially for 6 months.
And you may give up halfway through, or you can import a file directly from your bank or your credit card.
Yeah.
So most of us, I'm assuming in this day and age, have online banking. So you would log into your bank, which this part I can't do because of, we're sharing the screen. So you would log into your bank, do a search for the transactions that you want. So like January 1 to June 30th, something to that effect. And in the kind of the center part of the screen, a little bit to the right, there will be a little icon, a little download icon on your bank or credit card thing where you could download the transactions. It'll ask you if you want to download them as a CSV file. So you want to say yes. If you're using QuickBooks Desktop, you could download the QuickBooks, because some of them have a straight QuickBooks connection, but that's for desktop, not for online. You need the CSV file. So I have samples of CSV files. So they'll come in like this, like an Excel document. So this one here that's on the screen right now is Chase. So you could see all of the outgoing transactions have a little negative dash in front of them. But if you look at an American Express, all of the payments have a negative dash on them, and all of the purchases have a positive number. So this is something that I find to be the most common mistake that people have when they import from a CSV file, is that it imports backwards. And the most common one is American Express. So you want the transactions that you purchase, you want all of those to have the negative sign. You want your payments to be a positive number for when you import. So what I typically do is, when I have a client or myself that has an Amex, I'll create a formula to then reverse it. So this way now the payments are positive and the transactions are negative. And then this middle column here, the bad one, I can hide it for when I do the imports. So this way then, then I don't accidentally select the wrong one. So once you have your CSV file set up correctly and your transactions are all in the correct format and the dates are in the correct format, then you go back to your QuickBooks and you'll use this drop down icon on your banking page that has a link account, upload file. And then I had to do screenshots for the rest of this because QuickBooks won't let me upload into the sample company. So you'll hit the browse button, find your CSV file that you saved, and then from there, so this is what that screen looks like in the screenshot. And then the next screen that will pull up will be this one. And so it shows the file name, and then you use the drop down arrow to pick if it's your bank account or credit card, and whichever one you specifically want those to report to. Then you hit next, and then that takes you to this screen, and then that will match up with the columns. So you have the date, the transaction description, and then the amount. And you could either have the one singular column like I showed you that has both positive and negative numbers, or you could separate them into two different columns. And then you hit next, and then it brings up all of the transactions that you are getting ready to import into your QuickBooks. So just double check again that all of the purchases have negative values and the payments have positive values. And then you'd hit next, and then a screen will pop up that says let's go, and you say yes. And then all of your transactions will now be listed here.
Nice.
To add or match or transfer, everything like that. So that makes it quick and easy. Now they're all ready for you just to kind of point and click versus individually putting in, which this also kind of eliminates the whole process of human error. Like, have you ever entered something in, like if it was $800.52, you put $800.25, something like that. So it kind of eliminates that.
Nice.
So
And it eliminates a lot of time from procrastinating because now I don't have to input everything, right? It's just
right. So yeah, so now you'll kind of just point and click on those. So I've had to do these imports before, and it maxes you out on how many transactions you can import at a time. I think I don't remember, but I want to say it's like 271. So you might have to like break them up into multiple spreadsheets, or maybe it's 571. I don't remember, but it will cut you off at a point because I had to do one that was like 2,300 transactions. So I had to break it up into a few different spreadsheets.
Just getting started.
Yeah. So the next little trick I'll show you guys for cleanup processes is if you sort it by your description. So all of these tabs up here, date, description, payee, category, whatever, spent, received, you can sort it by that. So let's say you went to like the BP gas station. Once you sort it by description and it puts it in alphabetical order, all of those BPs will populate here. See, here's the rental company, the A rental. So you could select. So obviously these are different months, different dates. You could select them all and then click update. And so the category would be, hopefully they have it in here. Yeah. So equipment rental. And then I hit apply and accept. And now all of those transactions that are the same all have been accepted now. So you could select 50, 60 transactions at once if it's all going to the same place. Because if you keep it sorted, if you import a lot of transactions and you keep it sorted by date and you do some, and then maybe like a week or two later you come back to do some more, you might not remember that you put Menards under job supplies, and now you're like, oh, is this a job supply or a cost of goods sold or this or that? So you kind of want as much consistency as you can have, and this kind of helps eliminate that issue. So those are kind of like a little tip to get things moving along quickly. Obviously, the things that are matches, those are fairly simple because this expense one had an actual expense in here and it matches the names. So you could click match. If you run payroll through QuickBooks, most of that will have match features. If there is multiple records, like this one, for example, you'll want to click on it and make sure the dates match and the name and everything matches. So obviously this one is for the 18th and not the 11th. So you could match it or select a different one. If this one maybe was a partial payment from somebody, you could hit find other matches and it will pull up all open invoices or expenses. So that's something that people really need to be careful with when they're doing these and using the match feature, because all QuickBooks is going to do is look for something that's of the same dollar amount. That doesn't necessarily make it the correct one. Like, for example, this expense here on 918, it's showing books by Betsy, but it's trying to match it to some Pam expense. So clearly, this is not the same company, same service. So you don't want to match that. You want to edit that before you accept it in. So I don't know if anybody out there that's watching on um, on Facebook or the watch parties or anything, if they have any questions about anything we've covered so far. But that's kind of some of the cleanup things that you would look at and do for your import.
Or they could hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah, or you could hire a bookkeeper and be more than happy to get the cleanup done. Preferably sooner rather than later. Typically, I like to let people know that usually after you finish the first 3 quarters of the year, so after September 30th, it's usually a good idea as a small business owner to make an appointment with your CPA to kind of go over the numbers for the first 3 quarters, kind of get a game plan, an idea of where things are at going into fourth quarter, and kind of get an estimated idea of a potential tax liability that you might have. Because if you have, maybe some decent cash in the bank and you're also showing a pretty sizable profit, there's things that you can maybe purchase or do as a small business owner to help kind of relieve such a heavy tax liability at the end of the year. I know a lot of people during fourth quarter take the time to maybe give a facelift to their office. Maybe they need some new updated equipment. Maybe they are going to trade in a vehicle or do things where they could kind of get rid of some of that cash and also add an expense to the business. Maybe looking to open a SEP account for retirement. That's usually a big write off for businesses. There's health insurance. That's another big item that I feel some small business owners don't take full advantage of. If you offer health insurance benefits to your employees and you pay that percentage that you're obligated to, or you pay a stipend, so just a flat rate of $200 per employee towards their benefit, you need to make sure that Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or United Health, whoever your provider is, that you're taking those invoices and splitting them out properly. So as the employer, you get the full tax benefit of that, meaning that you get the full expense write off and your profit and loss. Because some people just kind of guesstimate on that and they shortchange themselves as the employer on that. So that's another thing that we always encourage people to take a look at. So that's kind of that for the import side of things. Then the next thing,
Well, the next thing is if somebody wanted to learn more about what you do, how you do it, or just had questions about their bookkeeping that you might be able to answer, how they get in touch with you
well, they could ask live on Facebook during one of the shows.
during Ask a Bookkeeper.
They could give me a call, 847-942-3004. They can email me at stuff@stuffsbooks.com. They can make an appointment and come by our new office at 1400 State Route 31, Suite 207 in McHenry. Usually, if you see my car, which is pretty identifiable since it
Yeah.
says Stuff's Books on there, it's a good key indicator that I'm here in the office. So
Stop on in.
we would be more than happy to answer any questions or do a review. We do offer a free QuickBooks health check, which is where we go in and kind of take a look at your transactions that you've coded, take a look at your balance sheet, your profit and loss statement, and just kind of give you our professional opinion on the way you've been handling your books or not handling your books, and some tips on what we think you could do to improve on that. And then we could either help you do it and we could give you a price, or you could make the attempt as well.
Good luck. Now, you were saying about that was the importing side of things.
Yeah, so after you import everything, you get it all expensed out and kind of use those little tools that I showed about sorting the data and, doing mass um, accepting or transfers and stuff like that. Then that will kind of make that easier and quicker versus you manually going in and doing one transaction at a time. And then after we complete that step, the next thing would be it's recommended you meet up with your CPA and kind of take a look at where you're at just to get kind of an idea. Because I've seen where people have are going to have a large tax liability and they have some extra cash and they didn't speak to their CPA, and then they went out and made a large purchase.
Oops.
Which was technically not their money to spend because that was the IRS money. So so before you make any big purchases at the end of the year, it's usually a good idea to get that guesstimated number from your CPA, and just kind of get an idea of where you're at. We, even as a bookkeeping firm, I do touch base with my CPA that does my taxes, and they kind of just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on my ideas for fourth quarter, and what we want to purchase or do with the money or move some stuff around. So that's always recommended across the board.
And if you need one, just call www.mobile.tax.
Yes, Eric Mason, we do work with him with mobile accounting. He has helped and reviewed some of our clients on a quarterly basis as well. So, and then the next cleanup area you'd kind of want to look and assess, which we've covered before on previous shows, but we'll just kind of go through these kind of quick, is your balance sheet. You want to make sure that your assets are showing positive numbers. Like right now, this checking account is showing it's negative, which is kind of a problem because normally the bank doesn't let you carry that type of negative balance. So you want to make sure your assets are showing positive numbers. You want to make sure your liabilities are also carrying positive numbers, because if your liability is showing a negative number, then that means, like, if it's your Visa card, then that means that Visa owes you that money back. Or if it's showing like that you overpaid on your payroll taxes or something like that, then again, it shows that the government owes you that money back. So you want to make sure um, that those numbers make sense and they match your loan statements or credit card statements, um, and things like that. So that's kind of just the run through on what we look at on the balance sheet. On your profit and loss, you want to make sure all of your revenues are positive, unless it's your discount refund category, then obviously that one's going to be negative. But you want to make sure your revenues are positive, your expenses are positive. Usually it's going to flag your CPA to ask questions if you have a negative expense category in here. And then the next thing we kind of look at for end of year would be your accounts receivable report. You kind of want to look through that and make sure all of these clients that have open balances, especially things over 60 days past due, are actual collectible money. Um, because if it's not collectible and you use the accrual method of accounting, then you want to write it off and take that bad debt expense. And also, it's also another way to kind of check and make sure, because you could be looking at this and be like, no way, Bill paid me that $85, and now you know that somewhere um, in your banking something was obviously either matched or coded incorrectly, because it's still showing that Bill has a balance, but you know he paid in full. So it's another way to have a double check and make sure everything is current and clean going into 2021. You don't want to leave any of these lingering things out there year over year, because if you do it and build it up over like a 2 or 3 year period of time, you're going to have these large journal entries that you're going to have to put in to make these adjustments. And it's really going to impact your profit and loss. And then when you do a comparison of year over year, you have this weird year that kind of took all of the brunt of the lack of cleanup in the previous years. So it doesn't give you necessarily the truest picture of where you were at.
Hard to forecast that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you could also look at your accounts payable summary, make sure any vendors that are owed, it's still valid, that you still owe them, that you're not waiting on any credits, anything like that. Make sure that those are cleaned up and written off. And just because you're mad at a vendor at that time doesn't mean that you should write that off. Like, give it a minute. Because I've seen before where people are like, well, I'm not paying them. And then they take the invoice out of the system. So it's usually not the best method, but so those are kind of
IRS isn't quite as patient as you are.
well, it's just, like sometimes, I don't know if you deal with like the same vendors over and over again, and sometimes you guys have a little disagreement. And, I mean, I'm sure it's no different than if a client gets mad and
That's right.
has a moment.
Yeah, has a moment.
So yeah, so I know we've kind of jumped around a lot and kind of touched on a lot of different things, because I know that a lot of these things when we're in the sample company is kind of an information dump for a lot of you guys. So if there's any questions, comments that you guys have out there on Facebook or on the watch parties, feel free to jump in and ask the question, or feel free to private message me after the show and we can go over all of that as well. I guess another main cleanup thing that I always let people know, that you want to do this 100% before the end of the year. If you have not gotten your W-9s from your subcontractors that you need to send a 1099 to, well, one, the day you start working with them, you should get one. So that would be any single, like kind of a guy in a truck or girl in a truck kind of situation, a sole proprietor, or an LLC. Those should be given 1099s at the end of the year. If it's an incorporation, you could send them a 1099, but I don't believe it's legally required, or it's not. I shouldn't use the word legally. I don't believe it's required to send them when they're an incorporation. But again, double check with your CPA on that in case the rules have changed since I last looked that up in 2017.
So, question is, how often should I do these year-end tips and tricks?
Well, every year.
I mean, do you do it at the end of each quarter? Do you suggest doing these type of things, or how do you, or is it just the cleanup before the end of the year?
I mean, ideally, you want to be maintaining your books month over month, and you want to make sure that the banking side of things, your reconciliations, you want to make sure month over month that those are accurate and done and up to date. The accounts receivable, accounts payable reports, I would probably check those over maybe twice a year, and determine if there's anything that is uncollectible. And I'm sure, as you know, Kent, that when you guys have requested, if I want to come for a line of credit against my receivables, you're going to want to see my current list of receivables, and anything over 60 days past due, you guys don't count to qualify for the line of credit.
Right.
So, it's a situation like that. And also, if you have a bunch of money sitting out there and you're not collecting on it, that doesn't look so good. Also, when you go to a bank, they're going to be like,
Oh, that's that right.
They want to make sure that you're getting paid for the services that you're providing. So then they're going to get paid for the money that they're loaning you. Kind of all works hand in hand.
There you go.
So let's say that, so with the 1099s, you want to make sure that everybody's flagged. So we'll just say this advertising company, we'll say that they're potentially an LLC. So you could click on the vendor, click edit. And here is where you want to have this box checked to track for 1099s. And you want to make sure you either have the social security number of the individual. So if it's an individual or a sole proprietor, or their FEIN number in here for the business ID number. And then you save it. And then at the end of the year, you'll get an alert from QuickBooks in your contractors section. So you go to payroll, contractors, all the people that you have flagged will be listed here in this area. And then you could prepare your 1099s directly out of QuickBooks, and they'll email them to the respective parties, or you could have your CPA prepare them, or you could go to Office Max and buy a pack of blank 1099 carbon copies, and you could, print them out yourself or write them up yourself. You could do it old school, however you feel most comfortable with that. But this is something that I know is a big struggle because there's a deadline. You have to have these in the mail no later than January 31st. So even if you're not going to have your bookkeeping up to date and ready for the end of the year, this is something is a must-have, needs to be done for the end of the year. So you can get those out in a timely manner. So those people could also, so it doesn't delay those people from filing. If those people did keep good records, they could file regardless if they received their 1099. But hopefully those numbers match, because otherwise that's a whole nother problem and a different conversation. We'll have to bring Eric on for that one. But you want to make sure those go out on time, and you don't want to be struggling to send those late. So the rule of thumb, you get a contractor, get the W-9 filled out, get this in your QuickBooks right away. So that's kind of all that. I know that's a lot of information to receive. I'm sure some of you probably have already started drinking now after listening to all of this.
Just gummies.
So if you have further questions on this, or need some specific detailed things in accordance to your particular industry, you can reach me at 847-942-3004. You can check us out at stuffsbooks.com. Reach us on Facebook. Email me at stuff@stuffsbooks.com. Stop by the office. So there's a bunch of ways you can get a hold of us to get those questions answered if you're concerned about putting it out there on Facebook Live today. So yeah. So I think that kind of sums it all up. So I guess thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll be back in a few weeks on the first Friday of the month. I don't have a topic as of yet, but I'm sure it'll be super awesome, and you should tune in.